Hello students. Students, welcome again to the English class. And now let's continue our chapter number 7, Evans tries an O level. As in the previous class we had read, Evans had told that he wanted to give an exam of O level in German language, and his request was accepted, and now it was a time for his exam, and prison officer Jackson was standing nearby him, and he was telling him to get ready for exam, and also he told him before going to exam he would put off his hat as it was looking very dirty, very filthy. But after hearing these words, Evans says him that it was his lucky charm, so he wanted to wear this hat, as also he knew that the prison officer Jackson was a kind-hearted person and he will accept his request. So now in today's class, let's see what happens next. Just this once. Then Shirley Temple. If there was one thing that Jackson genuinely loathed about Evans, it was his long wavy hair and get shaving. As I have told you that prison officer was a very kind-hearted person and he accepted the request of Evans, and he told him that you can wear this hat but only for one time. And also he compares him with Shirley Temple. Shirley Temple is a name of an actor who was also having long and wavy hair just like Evans. And the prison officer Jackson hated only one thing in Evans, that was his long and wavy hairs. So that's why he tells him not to wear the hat, and also he tells him to get shaving. At 8:45, the same morning, the Reverend Stuart McLeary left his bachelor flat in Broad Street and stepped out briskly towards Carfax. Reverend means respected person, who was the priest. Priest Stuart McLeary. He left his bachelor flat in Broad Street and then he stepped out very quickly towards Carfax. Carfax, a place where main roads intersect. So he went towards the main road. The weatherman reported temperatures considerably below the normal for early June, and a long black overcoat and a shallow crowned clerical hat provided welcome protection from the steady drizzle. Drizzle means raindrops, which had set in half an hour earlier and which now spattered the thick lenses of his spectacles. As he had already got the weather report was saying that the temperature was below the normal in the early June, in the month of June, and that's why he had worn a long black overcoat, and also he was wearing a hat so that he may be protected from the weather. And also, as he was walking on the roads, there was drizzling started. There were the raindrops that had spattered, that had fallen on his thick lenses of the spectacles. In his right hand, he was carrying a small brown suitcase which contained all that he would need for his morning duties, as he was going to perform his duties as an invigilator of Evans. So he was carrying a brown suitcase also, which contained all the things that he needed for his duties. It including a sealed question paper envelope, a yellow invigilation form, a special authentication card from the examinations board. Authentications means here proof of being true and genuine. This card shows that he was a genuine person, he was the right person who was going to take the exam. A paper knife, a Bible. He was to speak to the women's guild that afternoon on the book of Ruth, and a current copy of the Church Times. These were the things that he was carrying with him while he was going to take the exams. The 2-hour examination was scheduled to start at 9:15 a.m. The duration of the exam was 2 hours and it was going to be started at 9:15 a.m. Evans was lathering his face vigorously means with energy when Stephens brought in 2 small square tables and set them opposite each other in the narrow space between the bunk on the one side and on the other a distempered stone wall. Now as he was shaving his face, he was making the foam with soap on his face energetically. Stephens brought in his cell 2 small square tables and also he kept them opposite to each other in the narrow space as it was narrow space in the cell, and he kept them between the bunk on the one side and on the other a distempered stone wall. Distempered means painted stone wall. Next, Stephens brought in 2 hard chairs. Firstly, he brought 2 tables and now he brought 2 hard chairs, the slightly less battered of which he placed in front of the table. Battered means very old, in bad condition. The chair which was less in bad condition, he placed it in front of the table which stood nearer the cell door. He kept it there near the cell door. Jackson put in a brief final appearance. "Behave yourself, laddie." Jackson again came inside the cell. It was his final appearance. Finally he came inside and he told Evans to behave properly and he called him laddie. Laddie means a boy. Evans turned and nodded. Then he nodded his head. "And these," Jackson pointed to the pin-ups of. Pin-ups means posters. Then he pointed towards the posters that were hanging on the walls and he ordered Evans to put them off. Evans turned and nodded again. "I was going to take them down anyway. A minister, isn't he? The chap coming to sit in, I mean." Then Evans nodded. Again he nodded and he told him that I was already going to put them down because I knew that one priest was coming to take exam, and also he asked him if he was right. "And how did you know that?" asked Jackson quietly. "Well, I had to sign some forms, didn't I? And I couldn't help." Then Jackson was surprised and he asked him how he knew that a priest was coming for the exam, and then Evans said that for that I had signed some forms and then I had noticed that the invigilator will be one priest. Evans drew the razor carefully down his left cheek and left a neat swath in the white leather. "Can I ask you something, Mr. Jackson?" Then he completed his shave and there was a broad strip or area of something that had become clean with the white leather. Swath means a broad strip or area of something. Then he sought permission from Mr. Jackson. He wanted to ask him something. "Why did they have to bug me in this cell?" Bug means here to fix a small hidden device for listening to other people's conversation. And then he started asking the question to Mr. Jackson why they had put here microphones. He nodded his head vaguely to a point above the door. And then he nodded his head. He shook his head again and then he pointed towards the door. "Not a very neat job," conceded Jackson. Conceded means here admitted. Even Jackson also admitted that it was not a very good job done by someone, as microphone was kept to be hidden from Evans, but Evans already knew about it. So that's why Jackson said that it was not a good job. They don't honestly think I am going to try to. And then Evans told him that I think they don't think honestly about me, and as they feel that I will again escape from the jail. They are taking no chances, Evans. Nobody in his senses would take any chance with you. Even the prison officer also told him that they are not going to take any chance. Even if they have senses, even any person has senses, he would not take such a chance with you. Who is going to listen in? And the next question of his was, who was going to listen his conversation with the invigilator? I'll tell you who is going to listen in, laddie. It's the governor himself. See, he don't trust you a bloody inch, and nor do I. I'll be watching you like a hawk. Hawk means bird. Bird who always keeps an eye on its prey. And then he says that it's the governor himself who is going to keep watch on you, who he wants to listen your conversation. He doesn't believe you. And then he says that he himself also doesn't believe on Evans. And he was also going to keep watch on him just like a bird hawk. Evans, so keep your nose clean, clear. He walked towards the door. And also while going towards the door, he told him to keep his nose clean and clear. Evans nodded. He had already thought of that, and number 2 handkerchief was lying ready on the bunk, a neatly folded square of off-white linen. Evans then shook his head again. He had already kept one handkerchief on his bunk, on his bed, on his narrow bed, as he had already thought about it that he has to keep himself neat and clean. Just one more thing, Einstein. Often prison officer Jackson calls him as Einstein. And then he tells him one more thing. Yeah, what's that? Good luck, old son. And while going, he wishes him best of luck. In the little lodge means cottage, in the little lodge just inside the prison's main gates, the Reverend Stuart McLeary signed his name neatly in the visitor's book. Now, the priest had already arrived, and then he signed his name in the visitor's book and thence walked side by side with the silent prison officer across the exercise yard to D wing, where he was greeted by Jackson. And then he came inside with one of the prison officer, and he came towards the exercise yard to D wing. Exercise yard means the yard where activities are done for the training of soldiers. And then he was welcomed by Jackson. The wing's heavy outer door was unlocked and locked behind them. First of all, the wing's heavy door was unlocked and then it was locked. The heavy inner door, the same. The McLeary was handed into Stephen's keeping. Now, he was handed over then to Stephen's keeping. Get the razor, murmured Jackson. Stephens nodded. Well, keep your eyes skinned clear. Skinned means to look carefully. And before going, he ordered Stephens to keep his eyes very carefully on Evans. Stephens nodded again, and McLeary, his feet clanging up the iron stairs, clanging means making sound, followed his new guide and finally stood before a cell door. Now Stephens and McLeary both were going towards the cell door, and while walking he was making sound. Where Stephens opened the peephole, peephole means keyhole, he opened the keyhole and looked through. That's him, sir. And then he opened the peephole and told him that was the person who was going to take exam, and he showed him Evans. Evans, facing the door, sat quietly at the farther of the two tables. His whole attention riveted to a textbook. Riveted means completely focused. Textbook of elementary German grammar. Then they saw that Evans was facing towards the door. He was sitting quietly and he was having a textbook in his hand and he was putting his full attention towards the elementary German grammar book. Stephens took the key from its ring and the cell lock sprang back with a thudded metallic twang. Then Stephens took the key from the ring and the cell lock started making the sound as it hit with the with the sound, with the metallic sound. The sound was such a sound, just like tight wire, or we can say just like a tight string when it is being pulled or released. It was 9:10 a.m. when the governor switched on the receiver. Now it was 9:10 a.m. in the morning and the exam was going to be started at 9:15. So the governor switched on the receiver. He had instructed Jackson to tell Evans of the temporary little precaution that was only fair. And as he had instructed already to prison officer Jackson that he would tell Evans of the temporary little precautions, and that was good for him. As if Evans wouldn't spot it. As he knew that Evans wouldn't notice it, but wasn't it all a bit theatrical, schoolboyish almost? But also he was feeling that it was looking just like a drama, just like the schoolboys play the roles. How on earth was Evans going to try anything on today? If he was so anxious to make another break, why in heaven's name hadn't he tried it from the recreational block? Now, he was feeling that Evans was going to do something again, as they were feeling that again he would try to escape from the jail. But also at the same time, he feels that if he had tried, he could have tried it from the recreational block. He could have escaped from the jail from there also, but he had not done so. Much easier, but he hadn't. Even it was much easier to run away from there, but he had not escaped from there. And there he was now, sitting in a locked cell, all the prison officers on the alert, two more locked doors between his cell and the yard. And also he feels now it is very difficult to run away from here, as he was sitting in the locked cell now, and all the prison officers are very much alert, they are very much aware, and also there are two more locked doors, they are between his cell and the yard, and a yard with a wall as high as a haystack. And the yard was also having a wall. The wall was very much high, and it is compared to the haystack. Haystack means here we can say piles of dried grass. It was very high. Yes, Evans was as safe as houses. And also he says Evans was very much safe here, just like he is safe in his own house. Anyway, it wouldn't be any trouble at all to have the receiver turned on for the next couple of hours or so. And also he feels there is no trouble if he keeps on the receiver on, microphone on for 2 hours. It wasn't as if there was going to be anything to listen to, was it? Then he talks to himself and says, there is nothing to listen to from there. Amongst other things, an invigilator's duty was to ensure that the strictest silence was observed. And also he feels it was the duty of invigilator himself that he has to maintain the silence in the cell. It was his duty to keep the strict silence over there. But still that little nagging doubt. Still there was doubt in his mind. Might Evans try to take advantage of McLeary? As Evans was a criminal and he could get advantage of McLeary. Get him to smuggle in a chisel or two, or a rope ladder, or. And also he feels maybe illegally he may convince, he might try to escape himself from jail, he might smuggle, he might adopt an illegal method in a chisel means long bladed hand tool. He may use long bladed hand tool, one or two tools, or he may use rope or ladder or anything else. So he was thinking about Evans that he may adopt any method to escape from the jail. The governor sat up sharply. Now the governor became more alert, he got alert. It was all very well getting rid of any potential weapon, potential means here possible, that Evans could have used. But what about McLeary? Now he was feeling that it was very good that they had already got all the possible weapons that Evans might have used, he could have used. They had already taken the weapons from Evans. But then he thinks about McLeary. What if quite unwittingly means without being aware, the innocent McLeary had brought in something himself? Now there are the chances that McLeary would have brought with him some instrument, some tools, a jackknife. Jackknife means a large knife with a folding blade. Perhaps he would have brought this folding blade with him. And what if Evans held him hostage with such a weapon? And what would happen if Evans held him hostage? If Evans captured him? And then what would happen if he used the weapon and captured him? The governor reached for the phone. It was 9:12 a.m. Then he called someone and it was the time 9:12. The examinee and the invigilator had already been introduced by Stephens when Jackson came back and shouted to McLeary through the cell door, "Can you come outside a minute, sir? You too, Stephens." Then at the same time, Jackson came there, and while Stephens had already introduced examinee and invigilator, and at that time Jackson came there and he shouted to McLeary and he told him to come outside, and also he called Stephens and he told him also to come outside for a minute. As this was the phone that already governor had called to Jackson, as he had doubts in his mind that McLeary would have brought something with him. So that's why he had called Jackson, and now that was the reason Jackson had come to them and he called McLeary and Stephens outside of the cell. Jackson quickly explained the governor's worries, and McLeary patiently held out his arms at shoulder level whilst Jackson lightly frisked his clothes. Frisked means searched for a hidden weapon. "Something hard here, sir." Now Jackson explained the worries of governor to McLeary, and McLeary patiently held out his arms and he was ready for the frisking, for the search, and he frisked his clothes, and then he said that, "There is something hard here, sir." "Ma, reading glasses," replied McLeary, looking down at the spectacle case. And then McLeary said that these are his reading glasses. Jackson quickly reassured him, and bending down on the landing thumb flicked the catches on the suitcase. And to be more sure, he even opened his suitcase and checked it. He picked up each envelope in turn, carefully passed his palms along their surfaces, and seemed satisfied. Now he checked everything. First of all, he checked the sleeves, the arms of the shoulders of McLeary. Then he checked his suitcase, and then he went through the envelopes, and he was very much satisfied. There was nothing inside the envelopes. He riffled cursorily through a few pages of Holy Writ. Riffled means searched quickly. Then again he very quickly searched. He went through the pages of Holy Writ and vaguely shook the church times. All right, so far. But one of the objects in McLeary's suitcase was puzzling him sorely. Sorely means very strongly. Now he checked out everything that McLeary was carrying with him, but still one thing was puzzling him. One thing was making him upset, that was inside the suitcase. "Do you mind telling me why you have brought this, sir?" There was something that was puzzling him. He held up a smallish, semi-inflated rubber ring, and it was very small, semi-inflated. Semi-inflated means half filled with air. It was rubber ring, such as a young child with a waist of about 12 inches might have struggled into. "You thinking of going for a swim, sir?" And it was a rubber ring that he was feeling that it could be worn by a young child. And then he asked him, have you brought it because you are thinking of going for the swimming?" McLeary's hitherto amiable demeanour was slightly ruffled by this tasteless little pleasantry. McLeary's hitherto means till now, amiable, very friendly, and demeanour means attitude. Now his very friendly attitude was slightly ruffled. Ruffled means disarranged by this tasteless little pleasantry. Pleasantry means joke. Now it seemed him just like a joke, and now the face which was friendly attitude, the face which was showing the friendly attitude of McLeary, now he was disarranged, he was puzzled now, and he answered Jackson somewhat sorely. If ye must know, I suffer from hemorrhoids, and when I am sitting down for any length of time. Hemorrhoids means piles. As he was suffering from the disease of piles, that he was carrying this rubber with him, and when he would have any problem, he would sit on this rubber. Very sorry, sir. I didn't mean to err. The embarrassment was still reddening Jackson's cheeks when he found the paper knife at the bottom of the case. Now he was feeling sorry, he was very much ashamed, and his face was still getting red. And then he found the paper knife at the bottom of the case. I think I would better keep this though, if you don't mind, that is, sir. And then he told McLeary that he would keep this knife with him if he didn't mind. Now it was 9:18 a.m. before the governor heard their voices again. And it was clear that the examination was going to be more than a little late in getting underway. Now the time was 9:18, and then governor again heard their voices, and it was understood that the exam will start a little late. Okay students, this is enough for the day, and now I'll see you in the next session. Till then, goodbye and have a nice day.